WACX TV and the Super Channel Network are pleased to present Transitions. This program is about life changes and people who are going and growing through the process. And now, here's your host, Carol Nelson.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Transitions. One of the things that has amazed me since I started doing this show was how dramatic some transitions are. To go from A, not to C or D, but from A to Z. And such is the case today because my guest is someone who today is a pastor, he's an evangelist, but at one time he was a gang member on the streets of Detroit, someone who was actually shot in the head and left for dead. Can we talk dramatic transition? Welcome, Reverend Randall Hall Walker. It's nice to have you here.
It's a joy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is a big transition. So let's go back to Detroit. You're growing up in a household where Dad is an ordained minister.
That's correct.
Often, and I've heard from children of ministers, that this can be tough because you're in the eye of the congregation. You got to be better than the other kids.
Exactly. And the pressure that's put on us to live a way that everyone's looking at us, and so and Dad is on us to be a role model and that type of thing. So the pressure that's put on us, and a lot of times that pressure can make us rebel. That pressure can make us say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to church. I want to go with my other friends and do what everyone else is doing. I want to hang out with Tom and Joe and Mike. I don't want to go to church. And so ultimately we can begin to rebel.
Now you have an older brother. Was he going through a similar kind of rebellion at some point, or did he more follow the line? Yeah,
he stayed on the straight and narrow. He changed later on, but I was the black sheep of the family, so to speak.
And Mom did a lot of praying.
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, my mom said she prayed for me for 10 years to give my heart to the Lord. And when I gave my heart to the Lord after 10 years, she said, I didn't know it was going to be this soon. She rejoiced in her prayers what God had done in my life.
So let's go back to the gang days. Were you pretty much an average kid until you started using alcohol and drugs?
Sure.
Randall everybody.
Exactly. And just got out there with peer pressure, got involved, using drugs and wanting to fit, to be a part. I wanted to be accepted. And next thing I know, I ended up in prison. I'm telling you, it was amazing how it just caught me. And one thing I've learned about sin and drugs, that sin will take you further than you want to go and keep you longer than you want to stay. Because I had no idea that I was going to stay bound 10 years on drugs and cross-addicted with alcohol. Had no idea.
You thought you were doing this just because everybody else was doing it, but you could walk away from it at any time. What kind of drugs are we talking about?
We're talking about heroin. We're talking about mainlining heroin. I'm talking about the heavy stuff. And to my amazement, the first 5 years of my addiction was fun. I'm just going to be honest. And the Word of God says that sin is pleasurable for a season. It was fun the first 5 years. But after 5 years, I wanted out. I wanted to quit. And then I found out I couldn't quit, that it had control over me, that I didn't have control over it.
You know, heroin was something we didn't hear about for a number of years because cocaine was the big media grabber. And then suddenly, heroin came back, and from what I understand, can have a greater hold than even cocaine can. Harder to kick the habit than cocaine or any other drug.
You know, I am amazed that heroin is back. Because years ago in 1972, when I first got on heroin, yes, it was something that was in the streets and we were using heroin, and then it faded out. The coke came in, cocaine came in, and then the other different types of drugs came in. And heroin just faded out. And when I heard that heroin was back on the streets, I was amazed. I was shocked. How in the world can this drug be back on the streets after all of these years? And I thought it had faded out.
What does heroin do for someone who uses it? Because I know we have viewers out there who say, well, just walk away. they don't understand the control
Yes.
that heroin can have. Is heroin something that puts you up and then the alcohol brings you down? And how does all of that work together with addictions?
Well, heroin takes you out of reality. I mean, you don't have no pain. I'm telling you what, you're feeling it's
Euphoric.
Oh my goodness, it takes you so high, and I don't want to encourage anyone to go there to get involved to experience you know, this high. But it's a feeling out of this world. It's a feeling that you're not in touch with reality. There's no pain and pressure of life and different things. You have no care in the world. You're just existing with no problems, and that's what it does for you.
Then why the alcohol? You said you had a cross addiction. What did the alcohol do once you started using that as well?
See, the alcohol will hold you over. Sometimes you can't get heroin right away, but you can run right to the liquor store and grab some liquor right quick. You can go buy it over the counter, so you'll just go in and get a half a pint maybe and just down that real quick, and that'll hold you over just long enough that you can hustle and get some heroin, which that's what you really want, but the alcohol is just to hold you over.
And then let's talk about being a member of a gang, because once again, this is something people often don't understand, and parents don't understand when their children get involved in gangs. They want them to walk away. You don't need the gang. What did that gang provide you?
Well, it gave me a sense of satisfaction knowing that I'm connected with something. That's why the local church is so important, because we can connect, people can connect with the local church and feel a part. Well, I felt a part with the streets and gangs and involvement, that type of thing. There was an association there. There was something that was exciting. I must admit, it was exciting. However, I had no idea that I was going to be tricked and almost lose my life. But the streets can be exciting, and it's like an attraction. The world has such an attraction, and the Church of Jesus Christ needs to have a greater attraction than the world. But the world, for some reason, has a greater attraction for our young people than the church. That's where the church got to get on. The church got to get on the ball, so we can have such an attraction that we can draw our young people. They can get excited rather than wanting to get involved in gangs, because I just wanted to fit. I just wanted to be a part. I just wanted to be involved. And so that's how I ended up getting involved.
Do you think you would have felt unprotected if you had not been part of a gang? Often youngsters will say, if I'm not part of a gang, I'm out there and I can easily be victimized. But if you're part of a gang, you've also got a sense of protection from other gangs and other gang members.
Exactly. Now, the gang that I was affiliated with was called Young Boys Incorporated. And Young Boys Incorporated was just a title. It sounds important, doesn't it? Young Boys Incorporated. But it was actually a bunch of young boys selling drugs on the streets, and that's what I was involved with. I was a runner for them. Unfortunately, I should have been maybe one of the head honchos there calling the shots, but yet I was running, selling drugs as a runner for Young Boys Incorporated, which was a gang. And ultimately, we fell out, and I ended up getting shot in the head and left for dead. And I tell people, if you don't believe it, you can feel the lead.
Is that how that gang, and I guess other gangs, work, in that people who really have the power aren't the ones who are out there on the line? They're sitting in some apartment building or some office building, and there are the younger boys who are out there on the streets and in very dangerous situations. Is that how this worked?
Exactly. And you know, the thing that was told us that the young boys can get out on the streets and sell drugs, and the law couldn't hold them. They would just spank them on the hand, so to speak, and send them home. They wouldn't go to prison. Of course, the law has changed now. But if you were 18 or younger, or 17 and younger, then if you got caught with drugs, well, they would just call mommy, and mommy would come get you, and you'd go home. But now this is a serious thing. But when I was young, then they felt like young boys could run drugs and that type of thing and never get in any serious trouble.
What did you get paid? Did you get drugs? What made it worthwhile?
Oh boy. Now, you know, I'm telling you, I am not proud of this at all, because today what God has done in my life is incredible. But it's a shame to know that I was on the streets there actually running, taking risks like that just to get high. That's all I wanted.
That was it. That was all you got out of it.
That's all I wanted. That's all no money, no car, no nothing. Didn't care about anything else other than that high, searching to get that high. Once I experienced that at the age of 18, that heroin high, it just took me on such a roller coaster ride, and just wanted that continuously.
And then in 1974, you go to prison.
Yes.
On what charge?
Oh, I'm ashamed to tell you. But I'll tell you. Robbery, assault with intent to rob while armed.
This was drug related?
Oh, sure. Oh, yes.
Everything was.
Definitely. Because I wouldn't do anything like that. But the drugs influenced me. Of course, I'm responsible for my own actions. I'm not trying to blame the drugs. I'm not trying to blame the system.
Right.
I'm not blaming anyone. It was me. I did it. But I was influenced by drugs and alcohol.
You go to prison. Is prison life different? Sometimes I've talked to prisoners who've said there's more drugs in prison than on the streets. It's not that big a deal in terms of addictions because you can continue your addiction in prison.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I'm not proud of this at all, but I was on furlough. And while I was on furlough, I got some drugs, and I took them to the shoe shop and had the gentleman to put them inside my shoes, okay? And I walked back into prison with drugs on me. And I did not know that they were gonna ask me for a urine test when I got back. Oh boy, you talking about somebody was afraid. And when I came back in that prison with those drugs, I'm telling you what, I was just so fearful. And then when they asked me for to do a urine test, I didn't know that was part of
getting
my
back
furlough.
in, right.
Yeah.
You're not going to get another furlough again soon.
Oh boy, you're talking about somebody was so afraid. So what I ended up doing, I ran up to a friend of mine. I said, "Listen, you have to urinate."
Yeah.
He said, "What?" I said, "Yes, you have to urinate in this bottle." And he actually urinated in the bottle for me, and I turned that in. Wow.
So you could get back in and be accorded another furlough down the road. In prison, gangs still, or not?
No, not. As a matter of fact, while I was in prison, I kept to myself. I had a few friends in prison, but I kept to myself. But you know, one of those times when I brought drugs back into the prison, I never will forget this. I brought the drugs back into prison, and I was back there in my cell getting high during the movie. And there were other individuals that were part of our clique back there with me. And here come a group of individuals, and they were actually planning on robbing me and taking the drugs from me in prison. And I was sitting there in my cell out of it because I had used so much heroin, and I was nodding like this here. I mean, I was like out of it. And all of a sudden, this guy steps in my cell. He's coming in to take the drugs from me. And a guy that was a partner of mine we called him Swifty Martin. That's what we called him. Swifty stopped him. He stopped him like that and wouldn't let him come in on me, wouldn't let him come in the cell, and turned him around. And you know what? I told Swifty, I said, "Listen, I appreciate what you did for me. When I get out of jail, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to send you money. I'm going to send you drugs. I'm going to do what I can to help you." I got out of prison, and I forgot all about him. And you know what? I ran into him one day on the streets of Detroit. He was so angry because I had lied to him. But you say all these things when you're in prison. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for you when I get out, because I got out a lot earlier than he did, and I didn't do anything to help him.
Now, you were shot in the head at one point. This is before or after prison?
This is after prison.
After prison. You're back out serving how much time in prison?
I did a year. I was sentenced to 2 to 10, and I got out in a year. I had a contract with the state that if I would do so many, finish a GED and take drug classes and do all these things, that they would let me out. And so I did good to get out of there.
Fair to say that you were not rehabilitated, however, when you got out of there. You just had a little hiatus there for a year.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, when I got out of prison, I was on parole. And it's just a miracle that I didn't go back to prison, because I went to visit a young man in prison. I went to visit him while he was in prison. And he told me, he said, "Listen, I'm ready to get out of here. I'm ready to leave. Do you know that I was foolish enough to put him in the trunk of my car and bring him out of prison. He was in trustee division. There's the inside the walls and there's the outside. I actually put him in the trunk of the car. And it was amazing because as I was going to the gate, I was looking at the guard, and I had my foot on the gas and ready to if he had said, hold, stop, I would have hit down on there and took off. But I got to the guard gate, and I waved at the guard, and he waved at me, and I carried him out of prison. And you know what? That same guy that I got out of prison, I have a scar on me right now where he cut me. A scar right today. The same guy that I helped to get out of prison turned around and tried to kill me.
So this is what drugs, this is what that kind of addiction will do. So you get shot in the head. Where? Doing what? Why would somebody shoot you? I mean, you certainly lived on the edge, so I guess there'd be lots of reasons for shooting you. But why in that particular case?
This particular young man, and I was going for bad. And again, I'm not proud of that at all. Because, you know, we get caught up on the Randall Hall Walker testimonies and the Tom Skinner and the Nicky Cruz and that type of thing. But I'm convinced in my heart that the greatest testimony is knowing God from an early age and knowing that he can keep you from sin. Because the same God that delivered me is the same God that can keep me. And so, you know, the testimony is good, but I want to glorify God in all that he's done for me because he has really been good to me.
And so I know the shooting was a pivotal point.
Exactly, exactly. See, I was going for bad. And
what does that mean?
Oh, going for bad?
Going for bad. I don't know what going for bad means.
You're tough. You are tough.
Right.
You are a tough individual.
Okay.
You don't take no mess, so to speak. Nobody's going to push you around. Nobody's going to tell you what to do.
So somebody shoots you.
Well, here's what happened was, the guy asked me for his money. Again, I'm running for Young Boys Incorporated. And one guy asked me for his money. He asked me, and I said, I'm not giving you a dime. Get it in blood. Well,
okay.
And I turned. And when I turned, pow, right in the back of the head. And I remember, I never will forget this, of course. And I hit the ground. Of course, he ran. He took a pop shot at me and ran, but he took off, and I hit the ground, and I'm laying there on the ground, and I grab the back of my head, and I look, and I see all of this blood, and I said to myself, I am sick and tired of being tired and sick. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I have had enough. And you know what? I got up from there, and I ran. And I ran, and I ran, and ran, and I ran down the street. And someone had called the ambulance. And so when they got there, then that's when I passed out. I mean, I had fought to stay alive, but when they showed up, I just passed out. And the next thing I know, my mom comes down to the hospital. Now, I was surprised to see her because I had done some things at home and done some things that I'm not proud of. And so I was really surprised. As a matter of fact, my dad, he wouldn't come. He had barred me from the home, never to set foot on his property again. I tell people when he comes down to preach for me, when I introduce my dad, I tell him, I say, well, my dad, I love him, I appreciate him. I said, but he barred me from the home, never to set foot on his property. I said, pulled a shotgun on me and that type of thing. And so when my dad gets up to minister, he says, yes, he tells you about the gun that I had, the rifle, but he doesn't tell you about the stick he had.
Wow.
So,
so this is such a pivotal point because here you are today, you're a pastor,
yes.
You had gone to 2 different schools for religious training, one in North Dakota, another in Lakeland. You're an evangelist, you are so involved in church work and involved with the mission to the poor. And that was the pivotal moment.
Sure, sure.
So what happens afterwards? Your mom says, finally, she gets to see a change in her son?
Well, she came down to the hospital and she told me this. I never will forget it. She said, son, she says, you want to die, don't you? I said, yes, ma'am. I want to die. I'm sick and tired of this lifestyle. She said, son, you're not going to die, so you might as well live. And so that got my attention. I recognized that, listen, I'm wanting to die, but I can't die. If I could die, I would have been dead. So I need to make a transition.
Yes.
I need to make a change. So she told me about Teen Challenge. Now, I might add that I was involved in 14 rehabilitation centers. Now, I didn't stay for any length of time. I mean, a couple of them I stayed for 30 days. But for the most part, I would go in to the rehabilitation center, stay a couple of days, and leave. And what I would do that for was because of my mom and my dad. I love my mom. I love my dad. And people would call them and tell them about what I was involved in, and call and tell them that, hey, he's out there on drugs, he's robbing, he's stealing, he's breaking in people's homes. And Mom and Dad would get concerned about me. So what I would end up doing is calling them, going to a rehabilitation center, and say, Mom, Dad, I'm in the rehabilitation center.
And it's working.
Yeah, to make them happy. But it was for them. It wasn't for me. It was for them.
Now, we don't have a whole lot of time left.
Oh,
and we have
boy.
so many things to talk about,
Yes,
because
we do.
today you are on fire with a mission. Besides having this very active church in
Yes.
Sanford, you are very involved in the Convoy of Hope. But first, let's talk about the church. Your church in Sanford.
Yes.
Do you get up in the morning and say, thank you, God, I have a mission in life to minister to these people?
Every morning. Now, see, keep in mind, I have more years today with God than I had with the devil.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've been walking with God now for 17 years, and I was out on the street for 10. So I got more years today, and I thank God for the years that I have. And the church is going well. We're reaching the community there. God is using us. Convoy of Hope. We're thrilled and excited. We are expecting 4,000 guests. That's going to be a
Now,
wonderful
Convoy
day.
of Hope, people are going to say, what is Convoy of Hope? Because various people come on this program who have various ministries. And Convoy of Hope, aside from your work in the church, is a convoy for the needy, for the poor
Exactly.
of spirit as well as body.
Oh, exactly. As a matter of fact, there's a family ministry tent there that every family will be ministered to. We're going to have counselors there. We're going to have food and groceries. We're going to have all kind of games and funds for the kids, free haircuts, free manicure. We're going to have different organizations there that's going to be there to assist, legal service.
People will say, are there really all these needy, poor families there? And I know this isn't something that happens just at one time in the year. So at any time, Convoy of Hope is out there ministering to the physical and spiritual needs of people.
Exactly. And it's a major outreach. And they come to the city, and we assist and set up and reach the community and show them love, show them Christ in action. And that's the joy, to be able to put our faith into action, that people can see that we care. We care. I care about the drug addict. I care about the alcoholic. I care about the prostitute.
And you've been there.
Yes, yes. And I know what it's like. I know what it's like to hurt. I know what it's like to be rejected. I know what it's like to be kicked around. I know what it's like to be abused. And so with that, God has given me compassion. He's given me a sensitivity. He's given me love. And as a result of that, we're reaching out, demonstrating the love of Christ.
I talked to someone not long ago who had come out of prison, who had a ministry, and he said, you know, a lot of people who haven't been there don't really know what it's like. They don't know how the sin can pull you another way. They don't know about life in prison. They don't know about life in the street. When somebody talks to you, you know.
Exactly. I know exactly where they're coming from. And you know, a lot of times I get discouraged because sometimes the people come across as if God's not enough. I'm convinced that the God that I serve is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or think, according to his power that's ready to work. So individuals must want to be delivered. They must want to be set free, because I'm convinced that deliverance is simply taking charge over the things that have taken charge over you.
And you don't have to be lying in the street with a bullet in your head to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
They were about out of time, but I have to ask you. Reverend Hall Walker.
Yes.
Hall Walker.
Yes.
2 names.
Right. My dad died. My biological dad died when I was 2 years old. Never met him. Well, my stepdad raised me. His name is McKinley Walker, and I gave him hell in growing up. And so after I gave my heart to the Lord, I added Walker as a tribute to my dad.
That is such a wonderful story. We're going to put a phone number up because I know people may be interested in your ministry, in your evangelism. They certainly may want to find out more about the Convoy of Hope, because there are a lot of people out there who may not just need this, but would like to be involved and help. Thank you for coming forward and telling your story.
Thanks.
That's a marvelous story.
God's been good to me.
He has been good to you,
Yes.
and you have been good to us to come down here and tell the story, and to have this church in Sanford now that
Yes.
is working so well, that you have with your wife.
Yes, Bradella, precious lady. She sings. She is an anointed singer, and she preaches as well.
Name of the church is?
Freedom Assembly of God.
On?
On 1515 West 5th Street in Sanford, and Seminole Gardens, located in Seminole Gardens.
So that's where the church is, and of course you're so involved in the Convoy of Hope, as are many other people who say, you know, there are needy people out there. You've got to help them spiritually, but you have to help them with their physical needs too.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. That's inspiring. You know, that's a nice thing about doing this program.
Yes,
is that it's
transition.
transition, as well
Right.
as inspiring
Sure.
people out there. I get inspired myself.
Well, you know, I
Thank
was
you
a little
so much.
reluctant to come. I was a little reluctant to share, because a lot of times people see that, and I don't want people to see me in that way. But I want to glorify God, so I'm here to glorify Him.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Whoa, dramatic transition, isn't it? Yes, well, the phone number is on the screen. You saw it just a moment ago. And thank you for watching. And don't forget, let me know if you know someone who's undergone a transition. It doesn't have to be as dramatic, by the way, as getting shot in the head and suddenly discovering that the Lord is leading you in another way. So do write me here at the station. And thanks for watching. We appreciate it so much. Bye-bye.
You've been watching Transitions, a program about life changes and people who are going and growing through the process. If you have experienced a transition which you would like to share with Carol, write Carol Nelson, WACX-TV, 4520 Park Breeze Court, Orlando, Florida, 32808. Join us next time for Transitions.